Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today we're going to talk about a new docuseries that premiered today on Netflix called the Manhattan Alien Abduction, and it's about the incredible story of Linda Napolitano, who was abducted by aliens from her Manhattan apartment back in November of 1989. Now, this was released on Netflix today, the 30th of October, but not without controversy. There has been a lawsuit filed by Napolitano as well as the estate of the late Budd Hopkins, who investigated this case, as well as he also wrote a book published a book in 1997 called Witnessed that details this case. And so this lawsuit was filed because there's some issues that, of course, the estate of the late Budd Hopkins and Linda Napolitano have with regard to this new Netflix series. However, we'll get into that later. I just want to say up front, though, I really enjoyed the series, and I don't think it's going to hurt Linda Napolitano. I think it actually, to me, I walked away from this thinking that she's telling she was truthful. There was family members were supportive. There were other witnesses to this. So some of the claims made by a skeptic involved in this story, named Carol Rainey, who was an ex-wife of Budd Hopkins. She's featured prominently in this documentary series, and that's the reason. One of the reasons why Napolitano has filed suit, because she was under the understanding that Rainey was only going to be featured very briefly in this, and she's talking a lot, basically trying to debunk the whole thing, call Napolitano, claiming that Napolitano hoaxed it. She believes that it was a hoax, and that's absolutely ridiculous when you watch this documentary. Anyone who walks away thinking that this was some sort of elaborate hoax, it's ridiculous when you consider all of the other witnesses, including not only Linda Napolitano, but there were some of the witnesses that were featured in this documentary, from including a newer interview of the different witnesses that saw her actually rising up through the clouds toward a ship, a hovering ship, back in 1989. I don't see how it could be, how anyone could see this as a hoax. I think that this Carol Rainey, who ended up getting divorced from Hopkins in 2006, he died in 2011. I think that she's just, it seems like she came off in the documentary as vindictive and untruthful and jealous. A lot of different things came to mind watching this. I guess to the debunker mind, to the skeptical mind, maybe people might lean to her assertions, but again, she really doesn't offer much that proves this was a hoax. I don't see how it could have been. As we all know, this is a real phenomenon. I know this for a fact because I encountered one of these creatures myself, and of course we have the evidence now, as I've been talking about on this show. That's the good news here, actually. People, this show still makes this whole alien abduction story like a mystery. Is it real or is it not? Well, it's real because not only are there all these witnesses, and there's a lot of other alien abductees that were interviewed for this docuseries. Not only are there all these different people who have experienced this, but we have the evidence now. We have the evidence that shows the creatures, right? Like I've been talking about, that we have, that were filmed on a cell phone camera in Las Vegas last year, that shows the beings, and the beings meet the descriptions of what a lot of these alien abductees talk about, what of the creatures that take them, including a small gray, as I've been talking about. So I don't see. I think this was a very interesting docuseries, and I don't think it stains the reputation of Linda Napolitano, although that's one of the aspects of this lawsuit that was filed. She does claim that it ruins her reputation. I don't think it does. I mean, there could be there's other reasons for the lawsuit. There's other aspects of the lawsuit that she probably is correct about, but for ruining her reputation, I don't see that at all. In fact, the way I looked at that docuseries, it was a 3-part series. I look at it as Carol Rainey as someone who comes off to me as a vindictive person, jealous person, someone who perhaps was suffering from some ontological shock, like she just can't accept it. She can't accept this reality. Like a lot of debunkers and skeptics out there, she opines toward the end of this whole thing that Carol Rainey, she says that she believes that there has to be something else out there, but she can't believe the stuff that's happening here. We hear that all the time. They have no problem believing that it's something else that's out there. I believe that too. Of course, I believe that, right? They have no problem with that, but they have big issues when it comes to aliens here on this planet interacting with human beings. So anyway, let's get into the story. I'll talk. This is an article here. This is from allthat'sinteresting.com. I'll leave a link for everything that I'm sharing here today. And this was an article from a couple of days ago. The unbelievable story of Linda Napolitano, the New York housewife who was allegedly abducted by aliens. And anyway, let's get into this article. It says here, Linda Napolitano was a typical housewife living in Manhattan with her husband and 2 children. But everything changed on November 30th, 1989, when she claims 3 gray bipedal creatures abducted her from her 12th floor apartment. Napolitano said she was then paralyzed and lifted through a blue beam of light into a spaceship where the aliens performed experiments on her before returning her to her bedroom. Napolitano's alleged abduction was widely publicized by ufologist Budd Hopkins, who claimed that 23 witnesses had seen Napolitano rising through the sky and into a UFO near the Brooklyn Bridge that night, including an important government official rumored to be the United Nations Secretary General Javier Perez de Cuellar. If I was hallucinating, Napolitano told Vanity Fair in 2013, then the witnesses saw my hallucination. That sounds crazier than the whole abduction phenomenon. But some have called the story's credibility into question, pointing out that most of the alleged witnesses' identities have never been verified. Let me just stop there for a minute. For one thing, they showed some of the witnesses in this documentary and a lot of archival footage, a lot of them that were interviewed by Budd Hopkins in the early 1990s, and they had some guy, just a recent interview, who had witnessed it. He talked about what he saw. He saw this woman rising up toward this UFO. There was a blackout that night on November 30th, 1989. The lights went out, and the guy's car, actually, he was driving a car, and it stopped working, and he looked up, and he saw this woman rising near the Brooklyn Bridge up to this flying saucer, or some sort of a craft in the sky. So there were witnesses, and they had a witness featured interviewed just recently for this docuseries. So I don't know what this article is, why they're saying this. In addition to that, they showed a lot of them being interviewed. So again, this article is, and the reason I'm bringing this up because I've noticed some other mainstream articles doing the same thing. Anyway, and there was a lot of other interesting aspects to the abductions that she experienced. Still, Napolitano's case continues to captivate alien enthusiasts to this day, so much so that her story will once again be explored in a new Netflix documentary, The Manhattan Alien Abduction. And anyway, it says here, at around 3 a.m. on November 30th, 1989, Napolitano claimed she was sleeping next to her husband when she suddenly jolted awake. In her bones, she could feel that something wasn't right, that something was in the room with her. When she looked around, she allegedly saw a group of small gray beings standing over her, staring at her with black eyes. By Napolitano's account, the aliens told her to be quiet in some strange telepathic language, and she found herself paralyzed and unable to call out to her husband for help. Napolitano claimed a bright blue beam then shone through her window and lifted her body off her bed, out into the night sky and into a large oval-shaped spaceship. Once inside, the creatures brought her into an examination room where they laid her out on a table and inserted a strange metallic device into her nose. Then Napolitano woke up in her bed next to her husband as if nothing had happened. At first, Napolitano wrote off this terrifying ordeal as an incredibly vivid dream. Soon after, however, she noticed a curious lump in her nose. Now, this article gets it confused here again. Now, as the documentary explains, actually Napolitano had actually contacted Hopkins before this incident. She was actually in the Catskills she spent a weekend in the Catskills with her husband, and during that time, she woke up the next day. She had a dream that she was floating, and the next morning when she woke up, she was outside laying in the grass, and there was something. She felt like there was something wrong with her, like there was a lump on her nose, and she looked like her nose was crooked. and she went and she had an X-ray done, and there was an implant there. Apparently, this implant was when she was abducted later on at a different time, probably this one here. I'm not exactly sure, but that implant was had disappeared. But there was something in her nose, some sort of small, strange device, and this is something that a lot of alien abductees talked about. In fact, there's another alien abductee that talks about this. That's featured in this docuseries that talks about the same kind of thing happening to him. Anyway, she continues here. It says, she said she visited a doctor to inspect it, and an X-ray allegedly taken of her nasal passage appeared to show that there really was something lodged inside. Later, a throat and nose specialist allegedly examined Napolitano and found that the object was gone, but that there was a buildup of cartilage that suggested something had been lodged there recently. Now, you'll notice in this documentary, when you get a chance to watch it, if you have Netflix, Hopkins, this was a big deal for Hopkins. He thought that at the time this was one of the biggest cases he ever had to deal with. I mean, the fact that you have an X-ray that's showing an alien implant in this woman's nasal cavity. It was incredible, and they show that a lot in this show. You're going to find it very interesting. And then she took her story to Budd Hopkins, an artist and ufologist with decades of experience researching alien phenomena. In 1996, Hopkins published a book about Napolitano's story titled Witnessed, and soon Linda Napolitano was making headlines. Well, she was making headlines before the book was published. She was making headlines throughout the early 1990s. She was, as this documentary shows, she was featured on different talk shows along with Hopkins. Hopkins was talking about this case along with other alien abduction cases on different talk shows during that time period. Again, I really enjoyed this series. I thought it was very well done. I really, really like it. I highly recommend it. The one part that does bother me is the vindictive nature of this Carol Rainey, this ex-wife of Budd Hopkins. But anyway, continuing. Napolitano's case sounded like something straight out of science fiction. However, it differentiated itself from other well-known alien abduction stories in that, according to Budd Hopkins, nearly 24 people had witnessed the event. Hopkins included their accounts in his book, though he used pseudonyms for most of those involved, including Napolitano herself, whom he called Linda Cortile. Yeah, that he was using a pseudonym. She used a pseudonym back originally when this stuff was first going on. But again, like I said before, a lot of these witnesses, none of whom knew each other, all had contacted Hopkins back then after hearing about this, this woman, about when the story about her being taken out of her apartment was news. A lot of these people had started contacting Hopkins to tell him what they saw. And one of the witnesses was just a recent interview. Anyway, continuing, it says, according to Hopkins, Napolitano contacted him shortly after her alleged abduction. However, his investigation really began in 1991 when he said he received a mysterious letter from a pair of security guards. In their letter, the men claimed that on the night of November 30th, 1989, they had been parked under FDR Drive when they saw 3 alien figures and a woman in a white nightgown floating out of an apartment window and into a UFO. The security guards called themselves Richard and Dan, said they can't live with ourselves for not helping the woman, according to Daily Mail. Later, the guards claimed that their client, a prominent world leader who had been visiting New York at the time, had also witnessed the event. Some UFO researchers have since suggested that this politician might have been Javier Perez de Cuellar, the United Nations Secretary General. Actually, that's the documentary makes it clear that these people were working for this guy. After Richard and Dan got in touch with Hopkins and learned that the woman they had seen was alive, they allegedly visited Napolitano at her Manhattan apartment. The men were reportedly emotional upon seeing her, and the 3 spoke as if they'd known each other for years. However, the story soon took a dark turn. And it continues here. According to Hopkins, Dan began stalking Napolitano soon after meeting her, staking out her apartment daily. Then, in April 1991, the security guards allegedly kidnapped her, forcing her into their car and interrogating her for hours about her alleged abduction, trying to see if she knew more about the aliens than she was letting on. They even had her take off her shoes and show them her toes to prove she wasn't an alien herself. After this, Hopkins claimed Dan grew increasingly delusional and obsessed with Napolitano. In October 1991, he allegedly kidnapped her again and brought her to a beach house on Long Island. They don't get into that Long Island story in this documentary. They do get into the part where the incident where she was abducted off the street and taken in a car, and she pulled out a gun and told him, "Pull over, I'm going to shoot you." But anyway. Continuing, it says, thankfully, Napolitano was able to get away. While she never saw Dan again, she claimed he wrote her letters in which he confessed to being in love with her and to fantasizing about kidnapping her. During this time, Napolitano also claimed she was being followed by men in black suits, causing her to fear for her life. Meanwhile, more people were contacting Hopkins with their accounts of the alleged abduction, and their stories seemed to match Napolitano's. To some alien enthusiasts, the sheer number of witnesses proves that something really did happen that night. However, critics have pointed out that most of these witnesses refused to give interviews or to identify themselves. Again, this article is bogus just because of what they're stating there. You'll see these witnesses in the documentary, but several of them, some of them in archival footage, and at least one of them was interviewed just recently for this show. So, and then it ends here. It says, given the lack of concrete evidence, even some of the most devoted believers in UFOs believed Linda Napolitano's story to be a hoax. Well, let me just tell you this. I got to say this. After watching this, I found her to be very credible. She's still alive. She interviewed for this documentary, and I found Linda Napolitano to be extremely credible. And I found Budd Hopkins' wife, Carol, ex-wife, not credible. I thought that she seemed. I think she filmed a lot of. She's a filmmaker herself, and she's responsible for a lot of the archival footage that you see in this documentary. And I guess, it seemed to me that she was becoming jealous of this whole situation. She didn't like the attention that's what I got out of this. You could tell she did not like all the attention that Hopkins was given to Napolitano back in the 1990s during his investigation. Like he really cared for her, but she comes up with this, to me, it seemed like bogus hoax theory that Napolitano somehow came up with this elaborate hoax where she got all these people to say that they saw her doing this. That's bogus. It's bogus. You couldn't do something like that. In addition, she had the thing up her nose. She had the implant. Then she tried to say something to the effect of Rainey tried to say something to the effect that she did it herself somehow. It was just, the same sort of debunker, skeptic nonsense with no evidence. Just they just don't believe it out of hand. I mean, that's what it seems like to me. It seemed like Rainey at first, when she first got involved with Hopkins in the 90s and then later on got married to him, it seemed like she was really interested in it, but over time she just couldn't accept it. I guess some people, they need to see proof. Well, I could say this to Carol Rainey. I've been showing proof on this channel for over 6 months now. Absolute evidence that shows that we are not alone, that these alien creatures are real and that they are here. There's no doubt about it. And I watched that documentary. I walked away from it today, and I watched the whole thing, and then I went back and I reviewed a couple other scenes there for further clarification. And I thought, Napolitano was well represented in that documentary. I didn't think that that this is going to hurt her reputation whatsoever. To me, it looked reputation that should be the reputation that gets damaged, as far as I'm concerned, in this docuseries, is that of Carol Rainey's. Anyway, this article ends stating, over the years, Napolitano has stuck to her story even as people dismissed her as crazy. I'll tell you, she has said, I wish I was psychotic. At least there is treatment for that. And that's a statement that is made by many, many, many alien abductees. They wish that they were crazy. They'd rather it be something that could be treated medically, but it's not. And another thing she says throughout this thing is that they can get you whenever they want. There's more to this article. I won't read the rest of it, but I highly recommend, if you have Netflix, definitely check this out. Okay, now moving on to this lawsuit. Now there's an article from Forbes, and this was just published yesterday. And it says, headline reads, woman who claims she was abducted by aliens in 1989 sues Netflix over docuseries. And it says here, the woman whose claim of a 1989 alien abduction is chronicled in a new Netflix docuseries set to be released Wednesday, has sued the streamer in New York Supreme Court, claiming the Manhattan Alien Abduction defames her, paints her in an unflattering light, and steals the work of an author who first wrote about her story more than 20 years ago. Okay. Again, I don't know if this thing defames her. I mean, there's a woman in this docuseries who tried to defame her, but I don't think she's successful one bit. So I don't know about that one. Does she paint her in an unflattering light? Yes. And maybe there is something to stealing the work of the author who first wrote the story. I don't know anything about that. But anyway, it says here also, Linda Napolitano and the estate of late author Budd Hopkins, who wrote the 1997 book Witnessed, the true story of the Brooklyn Bridge Abduction, have sued Netflix for damages and asked a judge to halt the release of the Manhattan Alien Abduction, expected to hit the streamer October 30th. Well, if they do end up halting it, I'm glad I was able to watch it before that happened, because it was on there today. Napolitano and Hopkins estate filed suit on Monday against Netflix, Top Hat Productions, several people involved in the docuseries production, and the estate of Carol Rainey, Hopkins' late ex-wife, who was featured in the documentary. The Netflix docuseries seems to include several participants, including Rainey, who pushed back on Napolitano's claims she was abducted, and one unnamed participant is quoted in the trailer as saying she was pulling the wool over Budd's eyes during the book writing process. Now, the unnamed participant is Rainey. When you watch the docuseries, you'll see she's the one who says that. She makes that comment. The complaint alleges Netflix allowed Rainey to play a prominent part in the docuseries as an expert skeptic in the field when she was instead allegedly an embittered alcoholic ex-wife hell-bent on revenge against her husband, who cast both Hopkins and Napolitano in a negative light. Yeah, she does. Not only does she cast Napolitano in a bad light, but she does go after her husband and paints her husband in a bad light as well toward the end. So most of the bad stuff really happens in the third part. It's a 3-part series, and most of the bad stuff comes out there. And she really goes after Budd too, which again, to me, it comes off as vindictive. And that's actually one of Hopkins' associates who was featured in this says that. Pretty much just says that too. Napolitano claims the show sets her up as a villain for purposes of controversy and conflict, deflames her persona and character, and that the Manhattan Alien Abduction will destroy her reputation as an honest and decent person. Now, I don't think it destroys her. I don't think it will destroy her reputation as an honest and decent person. I felt watching that she came off to me as an honest and decent person. So I don't think that's going to happen, but I guess she feels otherwise, and that's why she's suing. I mean, in a way, if they told her that this other woman wasn't going to be in it that much, and then all of a sudden she is an integral part. I mean, this Carol Rainey is like this. She comes off to me as the villain. She's the of this series. That's what from my viewpoint. Then again, I am somewhat biased because I know what reality is. Carol Rainey apparently does not. And then finally it says here, Netflix has not responded to the lawsuit in court as of Tuesday afternoon and did not immediately respond to Forbes' request for comment. So I don't know if there was any other news with relation to this. But all I got to say is I thought the series was good, really well done. And I don't think I agree with I don't know if, I'm sure there are some aspects to that lawsuit that have merit, but I don't think that someone in that docuseries does try to paint her, Napolitano, as someone who's trying to harm her reputation. No question about it. But I didn't walk away with that. But obviously the woman, this Carol Rainey, was most certainly trying to paint her in a bad light, and she came up with this. She thinks it could have been some sort of elaborate hoax that Linda Napolitano was involved in, and also, and that just seems incredible to me. They actually showed there was archival footage of actually Napolitano's son. There was another incident that happened in their New York apartment after the floating out of the window incident, where other members of her family were abducted as well, including her son, her young son Johnny. And Johnny, they showed archival footage of him as a kid talking about what happened to him during this incident, and something happened, and the next thing you know, they're all all of them had bloody noses, like something happened, like aliens abducted them and did something to them. And they had Johnny on, although he didn't want to show his face, he doesn't want people to know what he looks like today, and he backed up everything his mom was saying. That's what happened. He doesn't like to think about it these days. He doesn't like to talk about it, but it's true that we're not alone, and that I was abducted along with my mom, and my mom's not lying, and she's telling the truth. She's not that kind of a person. She wouldn't do that. And this was after they had asked Linda Napolitano if she thought her son would talk to them for this docuseries, and she said she doesn't think he would. But he did, but it was like in a shadow, like where you can't see his face. You know, he didn't want his face to be seen for this. But I'll tell you what, it was a highly entertaining. It had me glued to the screen for the afternoon, and I highly recommend this. It's unfortunate that that there's a lawsuit now here. I don't know how that will be. Interesting to see how it all pans out in the end. But I'm not sure. I don't know. She's again, Linda Napolitano. She's saying here that that she was defamed. I guess you could say Rainey was saying she was saying things that weren't nice. I mean, of course, right? But I think anyone watching this, I think most people who have two brain cells in their head to rub together will walk away thinking that Rainey is the one who seems vindictive here, and really she doesn't really offer much to prove her hoax theory whatsoever. But here's the good news for all of them, right? All of these people out there, we have evidence now that there is something here. We know that these creatures are real. I've been showing the images that have been captured on cell phone last year. We have the proof now, the evidence. No one's able to debunk this whatsoever. I mean, you have people out there, morons out there who just say they don't believe it, but they don't have any means, actually, any brains in their head actually to scientifically disprove it. So we have the evidence now. It's a done deal, scientifically proven, and so everyone should be happy at this point. And Rainey, if she has issues with this, with accepting this reality, well, all I could do is tell her to check out some of the videos that I've been talking about, that I've been publishing recently with regard to the Las Vegas alien incident, and you will see that the evidence now shows that these creatures are really here. They are really here. It's not fake. It's not something dreamed up by people. It's not hoaxes. People really have these experiences, and it's something that we need to start talking about, and we need to start taking it more seriously. I mean, look at it. That incident happened back in 1989. That's what, 99, 2009. That's over 30 years ago, folks. Over 30 years ago, and people still don't know the truth. This lady was taken right out of her apartment, right? This Linda Napolitano was taken right out of her apartment by these creatures. They can take you, they can find you whenever they want to, and they could do this to you because you know what? They have that ability. They have the technological advantage over humankind, and they could do whatever they want. They could block. They could make you forget about the abduction. They could, for the most part. Some people it doesn't work completely, but they can do that. They have these abilities, and they're doing something here. They're up to something, and they've been up to something all this time. That incident happened over 30 years ago, and still we don't have any clear confirmation from the government about this. The governments of the world are not telling the people the truth about this. They're just letting us out there with no knowledge, nothing to try to fight back. Nothing. They don't give us anything to try to fight back against this. And look what happens. People like Linda Napolitano, for all these years, you have people that try to say that, oh, she's making it up, it's a hoax. You have people like Rainey trying to drag her name through the mud. You have lawsuits. You have all this nonsense going on when the reality is it's real. It is real. How could you deny this? There was 23 witnesses. You see a lot of them in this docuseries. You have to be an idiot not to accept this story. Anyway, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.